On? I'm not, oh, there we go. Wasn't lighting up. So obviously many communities along the southern border have stepped up and provided the services for asylum seekers arriving at our border. We know it's not easy, but in the spirit of that safe, orderly, humane process that we want to provide as many asylum seekers as possible, it's not just been government doing the job, but in fact, as you referenced a minute ago, a lot of nonprofit organizations and NGOs that are participating here. I know in California, the state I represent, the federal, state, and local governments have worked collaboratively with NGOs to ensure that migrants have access to services they may need upon arrival in the United States. Since I've come to the Senate, I've fought to ensure that there's robust federal funding for the Emergency Food and Shelter Program to support these local efforts. First question is for Dr. Garcia. In your testimony, you mentioned that for the past 4 years, Pima County has relied on federal grants to provide these services. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on what services are reimbursed by the federal government to aid Pima County? And if you're informed enough, maybe even speak to the timeliness of reimbursements?
Appreciate the question, Senator Padilla. One of the things that I made a point of is that we can do none of this absent federal support. Currently, the kinds of services that we are providing for these asylum seekers who, again, are in our community about 24 to 36 hours, the vast majority, is housing through both congregate and non-congregate settings. We provide food, we provide the medical kinds of clearance for those folks. We provide security, transportation, and related logistics. These folks have complicated needs. Some of them are very easy to move through. When you have a family of 3, it's going to take more effort. Some of folks have resources and a waiting family on the other end. Some folks may have fewer resources and just a telephone number. And so civil society organizations, Catholic community charities, as well as a variety of other are on the front lines trying to connect these people with resources in order to get them to the final destination. The issue of timeliness, critically, unfortunately, the current FEMA EFSP kind of funding strategy really does not allow us to plan for much more than 3 months at a time. You can imagine that this operation, which ranges from $1 to $1.5 million a month, is hard to plan for on a month-to-month basis. We need a longer time horizon. We need more reliable reimbursement. In the past, under the FEMA EFSP program, certain agencies have had a hard time getting that funding even up to a year.
And based on your experience and what you've observed, you talk about some of the funding, whether it's reimbursed on a timely basis or not, for housing, for transportation, et cetera. Are there any other gaps or areas of funding that the federal government doesn't cover that counties could sure use, particularly if we're looking at numbers increasing in the near future?
Sir, in the human services area, one of the critical things that will go away as Title 42 and the public health emergency is elapsed will be some of the coverage for medical screening and related services. We believe that we have a responsibility before a person boards a bus or boards an airplane to make sure that that person is safe to travel for their own sake, for the sake of other passengers, for the sake of our community. Some of those resources may be going away with the lapsing of the public health emergency.
Thank you. Now, I think a little bit of a greater context for the hearing today, and then back to a specific question. You know, since I've arrived at the Senate, been part of many efforts and conversations working towards modernizing our nation's immigration laws, right? Everybody says we need comprehensive reform, we need comprehensive updating to the process in so many ways. Some people like to focus efforts on, DACA recipients and dreamers more broadly, others, workers in the agricultural sector and farm workers and others. There's a bunch of categories of immigration laws that need to be modernized, and whether we do it comprehensively or in another fashion, oftentimes I'm met with, well, I'm happy to do that, but we've got to address the board. I'm happy to do that, but Biden and the border. And so here we are, once again, talking specifically about the border. Now, one of the specific elements in this greater immigration conversation is asylum. United States law is very clear. Individuals, with some exceptions, do have the right to seek asylum at our border. Doesn't mean it's automatically granted, but it is lawful to seek asylum at our border, whether they arrive at a port of entry or not. I don't see anybody shaking their head in the negative at the table. But despite the way it's often discussed, this is a legal pathway enshrined in U.S. law. But unfortunately, physically coming to the border is often the only option for many individuals because there's such limited ways to apply for admission into the U.S. from other countries. It's one of the many things that's broken in our more comprehensive system. In fiscal year 2022, we only admitted 25,465 refugees, down from over 200,000 when the U.S. refugee program first began. Only 140,000 employment-based green cards are available to individuals in any given year, and only 55,000 diversity visas are granted. Dr. Garcia, how would increasing pathways to the U.S. for migrants benefit counties in planning and anticipating new arrivals?
One of the critical pieces that we are missing is the ability to do long and medium-term planning for the flow of folks who are coming across our border and who we are in the position of having to serve. We need predictability both in terms of the numbers, we need predictability in terms of the types of folks that are coming in. All that will serve us well in order to move folks efficiently to whatever that next location is that they need to go.
I'll just, and appreciate your responses here. My takeaway is if we expand the numbers of people being able to lawfully come and make that process a little bit easier, more clear, that benefits everybody and takes at least some of the pressure off those who seek to migrate unlawfully. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Padilla.